All right, my name is Coleman. I'm so happy to be here with you today, presenting on behalf of myself, Dr. Bunch, and Colby Silvert, who's also here at the conference. As mentioned, I know this room was titled Study Abroad Programs. This piece is not quite going to fit that theme. And so I think Dr. Edwards, as you would say, this is going to be more than you want, less than you need. So here we go. All right, so high impact experiences are those that deepen learning and provide us with connections between abstract theory and concepts to real world applications. Specifically, high impact experiences allow students to collaborate with faculty, with peers, with employers, and they're also being touted and emphasized in departments within our profession across the country. So departments that are offering agricultural education, extension, leadership, communication. We also know that high impact experiences in international settings prepare students for a globalized workforce. So we had a little bit of a need for this evaluation. Our department at the University of Florida, the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication, implemented a 5-year strategic plan between 2020 and 2025. And one of the goals of that strategic plan was to design and deliver innovative and impactful academic experiences. One of the measures of success for that goal was specifically increase the number of high impact experiences that graduate students participate in to 2 or minimum 2 experiences. And so there was a need for this formal evaluation to even see what kinds of high impact experiences our graduate students were participating in, as well as how many. And so the AAC graduate coordinator requested a specific formative evaluation just to kind of establish this baseline of where we're at. So the goal here again, establishing some baseline data on the types and kinds of HIEs that graduate students within our department were receiving and making some recommendations for moving forward. So looking at what students are receiving as well as what they have participated in, as well as, again, identifying the HIEs recommended by our faculty and the graduate program. So before we can even jump into this though, I had to step back and say, okay, the literature says high impact experiences can be all of these things. What are the faculty in our department, and what do the graduate committee and in our department really define an HIE or high impact experience as? And so I facilitated a session with them. It was about an hour and a half, and we looked at what the literature said it should be. We looked at what we wanted from our graduate students, and they created this definition. So as we move forward and think about high impact experience, this definition is what we started with. And so really it focused on real world applications, those that go beyond a student's minimum graduation requirements. So if it's on, if it's on the degree program and it's needed to graduate, really it needs to go beyond that for it to be considered high impact, or at least what our faculty group considered. It needs to offer an opportunity for collaboration, for career readiness, the ability to mentor others through high impact experiences, and then eventually have an impact on that larger social, economic, environmental system. One thing that I want to point out at the bottom of this definition is that last sentence. High impact experience needs to be most appropriate for that individual student. So that's where the faculty advisor comes into play. So with this definition in mind, as well as the literature on high impact experiences, a little bit of vendor self-efficacy theory, experiential learning theory, Dewey, Cole, Roberts, coming into play, this impact model is kind of what it was used to guide this evaluation. So when we think about high impact experiences, as learners receive those experiences, we build employment skills, this real world application of those abstract concepts and theory, collaboration skills with others, peers, faculty, as well as an increased self-efficacy. As students receive that, then they enter the workforce ready to attain a job, ready to use those skills on a job, and then also mentor future learners as well. So if it's in academia, having students of their own outside of academia, maybe future employees that now I get to mentor as they enter the workforce. And then we have this idea of increased career success and then that larger impact on that larger system that we talked about. So just keeping that in mind. So we collected data in 2 rounds. The first round really, I needed some sort of list of like, okay, if we're going to measure these high impact experiences, what are they? I mean, we have a definition, but I don't know what the specific experiences are. So I went back to our entire faculty group. I presented them with the definition of what our graduate committee said a high impact experience was. And I said, okay, now list all of the possible high impact experiences that you think should be offered to AEC graduate students, as well as those which you've offered or recommended to your own advisees or students. And so they compiled those lists. I collected that qualitative data. Open coding was used to take that giant list of data, organize it into 6 themes. So we came up with teaching in formal settings, teaching in non-formal settings, research, extension and outreach, professionalism and service, and learning in formal and non-formal settings. So we had those 6 specific overarching themes, and then within those 6 themes, there were 53 non-duplicated experiences that were that our faculty had come up with. And so I organized that into an additional Qualtrics questionnaire. Well, actually, first, let me step back. I presented that list to our graduate committee, had them confirm it, and then put it back into Qualtrics to forward on to our graduate students. And so that was round 2, where our graduate students in the spring semester, at the end of the spring semester in 2021, all of our graduate students received that questionnaire via Qualtrics. So it was 108 students who received it, 44 who responded. And so the thing that is important to know about that timing at the end of the semester, that means that technically every student who received it had completed at least 1 full semester of graduate school at that point. We analyzed the data descriptively, looking at frequencies and percentages, really to get this baseline data for making further recommendations. And so I know this is a little bit, there's a lot going on here, so I'll give you a second to take a look at this. But this list of 14 were the most completed high impact experiences by those who responded. So of the 44 who responded, these were the 14 that at least 50% of respondents had completed. One thing that I think is interesting about this list is 7 of the 14, so half of the 14, fall into the theme of research. On the opposite end, there was a break. Less than 18% of respondents had completed these 11 high impact experiences. Take a moment to look at that. We notice numbers 1, 5, and 7. So participate in the study abroad program, complete an international research study, and deliver a research abstract, paper, presentation at an international scholarly conference were the 3 that were internationally focused, and they're falling in this list of least completed high impact experiences. So within that top ranked list of 14 most completed, none of those fell into the theme of extension and outreach. I thought that was really interesting. Only 2 were directly related to teaching. 1 in a formal environment and 1 in a non-formal environment. And then again, 7 were in that theme of research. On that list of least completed high impact experiences, it was interesting. There were 3 of those internationally focused high-impact experiences that I pointed out to you just a moment ago, those were the only 3 high-impact experiences that were in the list of 53 that had an international focus, and all 3 of them were in that bottom 18%, or that list of 11. So I thought that was also really interesting. So what should we do about this? One, any faculty should consider ensuring that their graduate students achieve a more balanced set of high-impact experiences, right? A lot of students are completing experiences in this area of research, but maybe we need to consider, like, even if I have a student who is on an assistantship that's very research-focused, are there opportunities for them to get a teaching experience? Is that something that they might need or want to receive? And so how do I give them a more balanced set of high-impact experiences, one that might even represent the land-grant mission? And then faculty should also promote participation in international HIEs. It seems pretty simple, right? But the problem was, again, there were only 3 on the list that were internationally focused. So that brings me to the next point, which is expanding opportunities for international experiences. We might need to get a little bit more creative here as a profession. When we think of an international high-impact experience, a lot of our minds go straight to study abroad or some type of long-term internship internationally. But are there other ways we can provide students with internationally focused or context experiences without maybe the expense of that international experience, right? We know post-pandemic that we have widely adopted virtual means of interacting with others. So are there relationships that we can build, projects we can work on, collaborations that we can foster with international context or focus that might provide some more international experiences? We know that our graduates, especially those who may have interest in agriculture, are entering a very global workforce, yet they may not necessarily be receiving international experiences that are considered to be high-impact experiences. And so just something that we may want to think about. And then lastly, I want to draw some attention to this last point. Relativity and learner needs are super important here, right? So what might be a high-impact experience for me may not be the same as someone else. And so relativity comes into play. This idea, Dewey talks about the continuity of experience, right? What experiences have I had before the experiences I'm having now, and how do these experiences I'm having now prepare me for my future experiences? And so as faculty or as advisors of students, we need to think about how do I assess the needs of my learner? What does the student need to be doing post-graduation, or what do they hope to do post-graduation, and where are they coming from? What experiences do they already have, and how do I bridge the gap between the two? So thinking about high-impact experiences, just because it's on this list doesn't mean check a box that student had a high-impact experience if it may have been something they've already done, or maybe don't even have the prerequisite to think, right? Like if I take a really high-level statistics course but don't have the prerequisites leading up to it, is it a high-impact experience, or did everything just go over my head? So that's really important to consider when thinking about how we're going to provide those experiences. And so also a few research recommendations. Again, this really was 2 parts, but we could go deeper with this evaluation and intend to. And so, one, we could aggregate the data by subgroups, right? I presented a very holistic look, and so these subgroups might include folks who are of different specializations, possibly master's versus PhD level. How long have they been in the program? If I'm a first semester student versus a student who's about to graduate, chances are I've probably completed more high-impact experiences, as well as even marital status or parental status. I know some of my graduate student colleagues who have children may have less time. It is what it is. And so as we look at these things, these are things that faculty could be mindful of as we're providing these experiences to students. Replication for longitudinal data analysis, larger sample could allow the opportunity to run some inferential analyses, as well as other departments across the country maybe want to consider evaluating something similar with their own students. We could potentially look at trends across the profession and across time. Lastly, I'll say one thing that I intend to do and we intend to do is to have some follow-up interviews with a lot of the participants in this study. Some qualitative information about students' perspectives, about their access to high-impact experiences, and some of those barriers could be really beneficial at painting a more holistic picture here. And so I look forward to gathering that information. With that being said, I'd like to answer any questions or entertain any discussion. Yep.
Brad, I often know this, but I don't. Remind me when you collected this data.
Spring of 2021.
So there's been a lot going on through 19 to 22, and that has restricted international opportunities for both faculty and students. So I'm wondering plausibly if you were to replicate that study 3 years from now with our students or other students, if you might get different results just because of access to international things.
Sure.
Then the second thing that's reflecting on the international experiences with public carpet that caught my attention most, I'm wondering, reflecting on the faculty, that was the group that created your list, we have some faculty that are highly engaged internationally, we have other faculty who are not. So I wonder if we have a bias amongst faculty in terms of the value of international high-impact experiences.
Yeah, no, I thought that same thing too. I mean, that data was kind of collected a little
Maybe
bit.
we need to do some high-impact experiences for faculty,
Right.
who then in turn can matriculate that down to students. That was just a comment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Aren't you pretty well connected with the dean and maybe could get some funds for that? Yeah, Scott.
Maybe I missed this at the beginning, but why was it focused upon the graduate students versus like maybe across the department of undergraduate and graduate students?
Yeah, so the need for the evaluation came from the graduate coordinator and the graduate committee kind of really wanted to look at it. We were interested in, so the way that the strategic plan is set up is we have this overall goal of providing experiences. One of the measures of success was looking at the number of high-impact experiences graduate students received. There was another measure of success later for undergraduate students. I suppose another recommendation for research would be talking to our undergraduate committee and saying, okay, we've administered kind of this questionnaire for our graduate students. Maybe we ought to think about now what are the experiences that our undergraduate students need and then doing the same there. Something I didn't have time for in my program, but yeah, I know you're starting a PhD, Garrett. If you want to do that at Texas A&M, I'd be happy to share the instrument I use, collaborate with you, we can make it happen. So,
as well as with that, do you think there was a bias among with graduate students? The emphasis is not on study abroad because you're like researching your own citizenship. So do you think that like influenced the international impact that students may have?
yeah, I mean, a study abroad experience for a graduate student, they're still going to have to come out of pocket and pay for it. Unless a graduate student has a specific reason to attend a study abroad, probably to collect data or study something. I don't know that a lot of graduate students may desire that, and maybe they have that experience already as an undergraduate student. So again, that idea of continuity of experience is possibly important because we only asked, what did you do your graduate program? So it's possible maybe they already had that international experience previously. That would be interesting. Yeah. Dr. Edwards.
Yeah, Dr. Coleman, for clarity on my part, I mean, the study was about high-impact learning experiences, of which international may or may not have been a part, correct?
Sure.
Okay, all right, just want to be clear about that. And as Dr. Roberts emphasized, it was the faculty that came up with the list.
Yes.
Did the respondents, the graduate students, have an opportunity to add other items that may perhaps they consider as high-impact learning experiences that faculty did not?
Yeah, no, I didn't even ask that, and that would be a great piece to add.
I'm just curious about that. And can you return to your slide one, results, I think round one or results one? You don't have to, it's not easy for you. But there was something that, was it the language of the responses that you used to discern this is teaching versus learning? Because we know just because teaching occurs, learning doesn't necessarily occur, especially if we're operationalizing as changes in behaviors. So how did you discern that?
Yeah, so the difference between teaching and learning was really just the locus of control there. If I was the person in control, I was either teaching a class, facilitating a workshop, TAing a class, if the information, flow of information.
But again, this was all from the faculty. The people doing
Yes,
this.
correct. So the faculty are saying
It was
that graduates.
this is teaching, whereas this is learning.
Right, but they listed experiences. And so if the experience was teaching or TAing a course or developing curriculum for a course, then that was filed under teaching.
Okay.
If
So
learning,
example of learning.
so if I attend a study abroad as a student, that would be learning because now I'm the recipient of that education. Now I would argue, I agree, as someone who might be teaching a class, there is learning going on there. But it was really just the...
Well, that's the assumption that learning is occurring.
It could, yeah, absolutely.
We hope some of that.
We hope so.
Yeah, and our graduate school offers a lot of graduate student professional developments. They have a whole division in
Yeah.
graduate school.
And there's still the underlying assumption is
Right.
changes in
Yeah,
behavior
they're
occur
learning.
as a result of that.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Oh, that's always a huge, dichotomy. Conceptually speaking, teaching versus learning.
Sorry, Coleman, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I think is interesting from the beginning of this is that, or I guess from the results of this, is that you see the disadvantage of there being 7 high impact experiences being research based. I mean, I would maybe disagree with you in the fact that if you're looking at preparing PhD students that are getting ready to take jobs, I mean, for those of us that are in tenure track positions at universities, I could be a horrible teacher, but if I'm not doing research, I won't have a job in 7 years. Whereas if I'm a really good researcher, or if I'm not doing research, then I'm not going to have a job. If I'm doing really good research and I'm not doing great in my classroom, I mean, there's that difference in what their outcome could be.
Sure.
So, I mean, could you explain a little more as to why you see that research piece being a negative side rather than a positive?
Yeah, so Dr. Rubin said, I didn't use the word disadvantage. I didn't use the word negative. All I said was more balance, right? So one could also argue as a PhD student graduates and I'm going to obtain a job, depending on where I end up, the type of institution and the type of appointment I have determines that as well. And so we need to prepare holistic individuals, right? Because I may end up with a 100% teaching appointment, or I may end up with a 3-way split, or I may end up at an R1 institution versus a regional institution. And so, sure, heavy research could be seen as an advantage, and I agree, I think it is beneficial. I think it is just important to be mindful of a balance of experience. And so, I don't think it is a disadvantage by any means. I do think that there's room for balance.
I'd like to interject and say that also, PhDs don't have to go to just academia, right? There are plenty of PhDs that utilize these skills in industry, so a balance could benefit them depending on what their role is in 4,500 companies, right?
Which brings us back to the idea of needing to assess what do they need post-graduation. Yep. Yes.
You can look at code like KUH, because they define, okay,
Yeah.
like saying high impact, like practice.
Yeah, so he really focuses at the undergraduate level.
Okay.
And so that's why I didn't completely adopt everything he said, because a lot of what he said was very undergraduate focused. And so that's kind of why I was like, well, we need to really consider what do we need at the graduate level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good question.
That's the end of our talk.
Okay, so I'd be happy to chat.
Excellent. So with that, that's the end of our session. I believe the next thing is a break.
Conversation can continue because I know Dr. Rodriguez has a question. Dr. Coleman.
My only question is piggybacking on Dr. Roberts and Dr. Edwards is that the Council for Graduate School for the entire country in the United States that oversees all graduate education. They have developed scholarly goals for graduate education. How does the scholarly goals link to your faculty in AEC's assessment or review of high impact experiences, right? HIE. And what your graduate students in, you have a program considered a view HIEs.
Right.
You need to bring these three entities together to see what is the best thing that really operationally define HIEs. And the other question which Grady mentioned is the stage of graduate students in your program. You mentioned the first semester students have no clue about it, and as such they cannot answer your 24-item survey. So if you compare, as you suggested so well in your conclusion, stratifying your students, 108 students, or 44 in your case, and compare them into first year, second year, third year, or pre-candidacy and post-candidacy, or whatever term you want to use.
Right.
I can assure you, your results will be much better.
Sure.
I really like your framework, but you need to strengthen.
Sure.
His first suggestion is put the record coordinator there needs to get busy about it.